The sun beat down on Whispering Pines like it was personally invested in keeping every blade of grass at the exact 2.5-inch length mandated by Section 4.2 of the HOA bylaws. Elena Hayes, 34-year-old internal auditor for a logistics firm, had learned to live inside that perfect illusion. My little ranch-style house sat on Maple Lane, third from the end, with the American flag hanging precisely at 45 degrees because anything else earned a $75 violation notice taped to my door by 8 a.m. Sharp. For 6 years, I'd paid those fines without complaint. $47, $800 worth of them, to be exact, because fighting Cara Delaney, our beloved HOA president, was like arguing with gravity. She always won. Karen moved through the annual community barbecue like a pastel hurricane in a floral cardigan. Name tag, gleaming, president. Whispering Pines, HOA, community first. Her smile was the kind dentists advertise, all porcelain and zero warmth. Neighbors called her so dedicated, which was code for terrifying. She'd once fined Mrs. Alvarez $150 for displaying a political yard sign the day after an election because it disrupts neighborhood harmony. She'd cited me 3 times last summer for my mailbox being 2 shades too dark on the approved beige chart. Today, the whole block smelled of charcoal and forced cheer. Folding tables groaned under potato salad and store-bought pies. Kids chased each other around the community pavilion, the same pavilion my grandparents had helped build in 1987 when they founded this place. I stood near the edge, nursing a lukewarm lemonade, trying to blend into the beige siding of the gazebo the way I always blended into spreadsheets at work. My mother, Sarah, drifted past in her usual haze, eyes skittering away from mine the moment they met. She'd lived 2 streets over for 20 years and still treated Karen like the second coming. Then Karen's voice cut through the chatter like a starter pistol. "Everyone gather round. We have a very special announcement." She stood by the grill, spatula in one hand, microphone in the other, her husband Doug looming behind her like a meaty backup singer. Her nephew Tyler, 29, perpetual man-child, designer sunglasses indoors, lounged in a lawn chair that definitely hadn't been paid for by any job he'd ever held. "As you all know," Karen began, voice syrupy with fake benevolence, "our community has faced some challenges lately, but we believe in lifting each other up. Tyler here has had a few setbacks. We've decided to help him launch his landscaping business right here in Whispering Pines, serving all of you." Polite applause rippled. My mother's smile looked stapled on. Karen reached in her tote and pulled out a thick envelope. "So, from the proceeds of the recent sale of the original community center parcel, your grandparents' legacy, Elena, we're giving Tyler his early community grant. $230,000. The number landed like a slap. $230,000. The entire net from the parcel my grandparents had deeded to the HOA with explicit instructions in the original charter. Proceeds to be held in trust for equal benefit of all founding families or returned proportionally, not funneled to one entitled nephew." Tyler jumped up, hugging Karen theatrically while Doug clapped him on the back. Neighbors murmured approval. "What a generous woman. That boy is so lucky." I felt a familiar click in my brain, the same click I got when a ledger didn't balance. This wasn't generosity. This was embezzlement dressed in HOA pastel. I stepped forward before my better judgment could stop me. My flats made no sound on the grass. "Karen," I said, voice low and even like I was questioning a suspicious expense report, "that money came from my grandparents' parcel sale, correct? The charter they wrote says any proceeds are to be distributed fairly, not given outright to one person." The chatter died. Karen's smile froze, then cracked into something uglier. Tyler's grin melted into a pout. Doug's face darkened. Karen took one step closer, voice still honeyed for the crowd, but eyes promising war. "Elena, dear, we all appreciate your input. But the board voted. This is for the good of the community. Tyler's business will maintain our lawns better than anyone." She laughed lightly, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. You wouldn't want to ruin the party, would you? I didn't answer. I simply met her stare, letting her see the shift. The quiet resident who paid every fine was gone. In her place stood the auditor who had just spotted fraud. I turned and walked away through the sudden silence. The lemonade glass slick in my palm, the bruise of injustice already forming in my chest. The barbecue continued behind me like nothing happened, but something inside me had snapped clean in two. The audit had begun. Back in my immaculate kitchen that night, shoulders still throbbing from the way Doug had accidentally bumped me hard enough to leave a mark as I left, I opened my laptop. I navigated to the hidden folder labeled Ledger HOA. 6 years of entries stared back. $125 for mailbox shade violation, $200 for visible trash can on pickup day, $315 for excessive holiday lights. The year, I put up exactly the approved number. Every petty tyranny documented with dates, photos, bank transfers. Total, $47,800. My salary had quietly subsidized Karen's reign while Tyler partied in Cancun on my dime. 3 years ago, my grandmother had emailed me the original charter draft before she passed. Elena, dear, we want things fair. Please review. I still had it. I logged into the old account, found the message, and opened the attached PDF. There it was in black and white. Upon sale of any founding parcel, net proceeds shall be divided equally among qualifying descendant households or held for community benefit voted upon by all members, not unilateral board discretion. Digital signature, time-stamped and verified. Karen had ignored it completely. I stared at the screen, the numbers blurring. $230,000 stolen. My grandparents' final wish trampled. And Doug's shove at the barbecue was just the latest intimidation tactic. I tapped my smartwatch, starting a test recording. The red waveform blinked. Tomorrow I would go back for the USB I'd hidden in my old bedroom at Mom's house years ago, the backup of that charter. But tonight, I let the rage settle into something colder, sharper, something professional. The next morning, the bruise on my shoulder had turned a lovely galaxy of purple. I didn't call Karen. I didn't post on the neighborhood app. I simply drove 2 streets over to Mom's, parked a few houses down, and activated the watch recording again. Step 1 complete. The house smelled of the same cloying potpourri and simmering dysfunction it always had. Mom let me in, wringing her hands. Elena, please don't make waves. Karen's only trying to help Tyler. I smiled thinly. I'm not here to apologize, Mom. I'm here to finish the conversation. Karen was in the den, sunk into her recliner, a glass of white wine sweating beside her. She looked up, eyes narrowing. Back so soon? Come to ruin another event. I kept my posture open, voice level. That money was meant to be split. The charter is clear. You don't have the right to hand it to Tyler. Her face flushed the color of cheap rose. She launched out of the chair faster than I expected. In my neighborhood, you don't question me. Her open hand cracked across my cheek, the sound echoing like a starter pistol. My head snapped sideways, blood filling my mouth. Before I could steady myself, she shoved me hard into the bookshelf. Books and photo frames crashed around me. Mom's whisper from the doorway. Karen, stop, Elena. Just let it go. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply pushed myself up, eyes on the floor, and walked down the hall to my old room now used for storage. Karen's voice followed, sharp with suspicion. Where are you going? Retrieving something I left years ago. I answered without turning. I pulled open the bottom drawer, fingers finding the hollow space and the small black USB drive I'd hidden there months earlier, the charter backup. 10 seconds later, it was in my pocket. I walked out past their stunned silence and into the bright afternoon. Back in my car, I stopped the recording. 6 minutes, 42 seconds of Karen admitting control, the slap, the shove, Mom's complicity. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, cheek on fire, but beneath the pain was ice-cold clarity. She thought she'd silenced me. She had no idea she'd just handed me her signed confession. The sterile hum of my home office wrapped around me like armor the next morning. My cheek throbbed under concealer, My shoulder ached with every keystroke, but my mind was diamond sharp. I minimized the corporate spreadsheets and opened the compliance manual I'd written 2 years ago, the one colleagues jokingly call the auditor's gospel. Triple evidence, documentary, financial, testimonial. Without all three, a case was weak. With them, it was bulletproof. Documentary evidence, the time-stamped charter draft from my grandparents. Testimonial, the crystal-clear audio of Karen's rage and the slap. All I lacked was financial proof of the $230,000 wire. That evening, my dining table became a war room. I researched Georgia HOA law, fiduciary duty breaches, misappropriation of reserve funds. I learned that as a descendant of the founding family and named beneficiary in the original charter, I had standing. Karen had appointed herself judge, jury, and treasurer. The presumption of proper administration could be rebutted with evidence of concealment and self-dealing. I needed a lawyer. Marcus Thorne, civil and financial litigator, had once called my audit work a rare talent. I drafted the email like a preliminary report, stripped of emotion, pure facts. Attached the password-protected folder. Exhibit A charter. Exhibit B my 6-year fine ledger totaling $47,800. Exhibit C time-stamped photos of my injuries with metadata. Exhibit D the unedited audio. Subject line, confidential inquiry. HOA misappropriation. I hit send feeling the satisfying click of armor locking into place. Marcus called at 11 a.m. The next day, Elena, this is the most organized preliminary file I've ever received. You've done 90% of my discovery. He confirmed the charter established testamentary intent for fair distribution. The audio was ironclad. Photos corroborated assault. But we needed the financial pillar, the wire transfer proof. I drove to SunTrust Bank that afternoon, as a compliance review. The personal banker hesitated over privacy, but I cited my status as interested party and mentioned subpoenas. 20 minutes later, I walked out with the transfer confirmation. Source account Karen and Doug Delaney, destination Tyler's Florida account, memo line community youth grant, Tyler Delaney. Only Karen's signature. My name nowhere. Pillar 3 complete. That night, morbid curiosity won. Tyler's public Instagram was a shrine to stupidity. New profile picture. Him grinning against a screaming red Mustang. Temporary tag visible. Caption. First purchase for the new Florida life. Big things ahead thanks to Aunt Karen's community grant. Blessed fresh start. Next post. Signed lease for a Tampa luxury apartment. Another. Beer on a white sand beach. Hard work pays off. Every geotagged, time-stamped brag documented spending of contested funds. I screenshot everything, labeled meticulously, and emailed the bundle to Marcus with one line. Triple evidence satisfied. Next steps. The blowback arrived via certified mail 3 days later. Marcus's demand letter to Karen. It outlined my claim, cited the charter, demanded immediate freeze of assets and return of $115,000 pending probate equivalent HOA hearing. It referenced verifiable record of assault that would be pursued separately if unresolved. 3 days after delivery, my phone rang. Caller ID, Karen. I answer on speaker, recording app already rolling. What the hell have you done? She roared. A lawyer? You sent a lawyer after your own neighborhood. I kept my voice neutral. I took appropriate steps to address a legal and financial matter. She ranted about family, neighborhood, loyalty, how Tyler was finally getting his life together, how I was trying to ruin everyone. Then the tone shifted to wheedling guilt. Do you want me to lose my position? Do you want depositions where everything comes out? I let the silence stretch. That's an interesting question, Karen. Let me get back to you. I hung up, isolated the 10-second clip of her slap and shove, and emailed it with a polite note. You asked if I wanted you investigated. Here's the audio for your reference. Perhaps it clarifies my position should I file a police report. An hour later, Mom called, tears already flowing. Elena, what are you doing? Karen is going insane. You're tearing the neighborhood apart. I repeated the same cold facts. This is about what belongs to me by charter. Nothing more, nothing less. Her sobs turned desperate. Tyler will have to sell the car. He'll be evicted. He was finally getting his life together. I felt nothing. The well of empathy had run dry dollar by dollar, fine by fine. I ended the call, leaving her alone with the silence. Karen's silence after that was heavier than her shouting. She was cornered, plotting. But I had moved the fight into an arena where her pastel smiles and selective enforcement were liabilities. Marcus filed an emergency motion to freeze remaining HOA reserves and compel a full accounting. The court granted the temporary restraining order within a week. A process server delivered the papers to Karen's door that morning. Another set went to Tyler in Tampa. The summons required both to appear at a preliminary hearing in 3 weeks and show cause why they shouldn't be held accountable for unauthorized distribution. I chose deliberate silence on social media. No posts, no likes, no cryptic updates. My last photo remained a bland sunset from weeks earlier. Their side would be watching for weakness. I gave them a void. Meanwhile, I poured energy into work, double-checking ledgers, becoming the office machine of competence. The neighborhood, as I had known it, was dead. What remained was an estate liquidation, and I was the auditor ensuring the books finally balanced. The summons hit Tyler like a legal brick wall. My phone rang 2 days later, Tampa area code. I set it on speaker, recording already rolling. "Elena, it's Tyler," he whined, bravado stripped away. "This letter is crazy. Court? We're family, neighborhood family. We can work this out, just you and me." I kept my voice flat. "There's no misunderstanding. Karen gave you the entirety of the parcel proceeds I'm legally entitled to half of. It's simple." He seized on the word. "So what's it going to take? Just drop the lawyer. Tell him it's all good." I almost laughed at the audacity. "I need the $115,000 that belongs to me." He groaned theatrically. "Elena, come on. I already bought the car, signed the lease. I can't undo that. Sounds like a personal finance problem," I replied, cold as granite. His frustration cracked. How was I supposed to know it was in dispute? Aunt Karen said she handled everything. She said you'd never make a fuss, that you knew your place. There was the payload, directed mission of conspiracy. I let the silence stretch, his words hanging recorded forever. "She said that, did she?" "Yes," he snapped, oblivious. "She said you'd never stand up to her. This is all your fault." I ended the call politely. "Thank you for clarifying your position." The new file, Tyler Admission of Conspiracy, went straight to Marcus. He called back in under 10 minutes, voice buzzing. "This is better than a smoking gun. Textbook fraudulent intent. They acted knowing they were violating your rights and banking on your silence." The motion he filed the next morning requested the preliminary hearing be open to the public. Normally probate style, HOA matters stayed private to protect neighborhood dignity, but Marcus argued the case involved fraud, abuse of power, and physical assault. The judge agreed. 2 days later, a small local news blog ran the headline: "Local HOA president accused of fraud, assault in contentious inheritance dispute. Public hearing requested." The article named Karen, the amount, and the explosive claims. The first crack in her empire. I read it once, closed the browser, and gave nothing back. My silence was louder than any rant. The courtroom was smaller than expected, wood-paneled and smelling of old paper and stale coffee. Judge Marion Albright sat on the bench, late 60s, reputation for zero tolerance of theatrics. I sat beside Marcus in a simple gray suit, hair in a severe bun. Across the aisle, Karen stuffed into a too-tight blazer, face a mask of simmering rage. Doug beside her, Tyler pale and hollowed, Florida 10 already faded. A single reporter took notes in the back row. Marcus called me to the stand. His questions were clinical. I described 6 years of emergency financial support via fines paid without interest or gratitude. I presented the ledger, $47,800. The courtroom murmured. Then the charter draft, the wire transfer with its incriminating memo, and finally the audio. The 10-second clip played. Karen's enraged shout, the sharp crack of the slap, the thud of my body hitting the shelf. Karen flinched. The judge's face hardened. Next, Tyler's recorded confession played. His whiny voice filled the room. Aunt Karen said you'd never make a fuss. She handled everything. It was a clean admission of conspiracy. Tyler sank lower in his chair, ashen. Karen's attorney's cross-examination was rambling and pathetic. I answered every question with calm references to the documented evidence. My composure was my shield. Judge Albright did not recess. She listened to closing arguments, then folded her hands. In the matter of the Whispering Pines, HOA reserve funds derived from the Miller parcel, she began, voice ringing with authority. This court finds the evidence overwhelming. Mr. Tyler Delaney, you accepted and spent funds you knew or should have known were not rightfully yours. You are ordered to return $115,000 to the HOA trust within 90 days. I suggest you sell the Mustang. She turned to the reserve as a whole. All remaining assets are placed under court-appointed neutral oversight. A full accounting will be conducted and distributed according to the original charter. Finally, she fixed Karen with an icy stare. Ms. Delaney, your actions are a textbook case of arrogance, deceit, and intimidation. You had no authority to unilaterally distribute funds. You compounded fraud with physical violence. This court formally reprimands you, removes you from the presidency effective immediately, and refers the assault evidence and testimony to the district attorney for possible criminal charges. A collective gasp swept the room. Karen looked as if she'd been struck. The gavel banged once. This hearing is concluded. I stood, smoothed my jacket, shook Marcus's hand. Thank you. You did the work, he replied with respect. I felt their eyes burning into my back. Karen's hatred, Mom's pleading tears, Tyler's broken stare, but I did not turn. I walked out into the clean hallway light, the file closed, the audit final. The word, then, is where most revenge stories end, but an audit isn't complete until every liability is cleared and the final report filed. My first act was to erase the last vestige of Karen's claim on my identity. For 34 years, I had carried the name Hayes, my mother's married name, after she remarried into Karen's orbit of influence. It had never felt like mine. The day I received my new driver's license, social security card, and passport, all bearing Elena Miller, was more profound than the court-true verdict. That was the day I won the money. This was the day I won myself. The first wire transfer of the returned funds, Tyler's money, depleted by his brief spending spree, but still substantial, arrived in my account. I looked at the number not with glee, but responsibility. This wasn't lottery winnings. It was my grandparents' life's work, a legacy of prudence that Karen and Tyler had treated like casino chips. I sat down with a no-nonsense financial planner and opened the Miller Legacy Trust. A large portion went into low-risk index funds for slow, steady growth. Another sum established an educational account for the MBA I'd always wanted but could never afford while subsidizing HOA tyranny. The final portion became a real estate fund, the down payment on a future home no one could ever threaten to fine or seize. For the first time, my future felt like a solid structure I was actively building. Life settled into a new, quiet rhythm. No contact from Karen or Mom. Through the grapevine, I heard the DEA was pursuing an investigation and Karen had retained a criminal defense attorney. Tyler, humiliated and nearly broke after selling the Mustang at a loss, had slunk back from Florida and was reportedly living in their guest room. His fresh start had lasted less than a month. Their world had imploded. It was no longer my concern. Their file was archived. About a month after the hearing, a message popped up on my professional networking profile from Chloe, a former junior accountant who had moved to another state. Hi, Elena. I saw the article about your court case. I just wanted to say thank you. I have a boss like Karen, too. For years, I thought I was the only one. Thank you for not staying silent. It's given me a lot to think about. I stared at the message for a long time. Of all the outcomes I had planned, This was the one I never anticipated. My cold, methodical fight had reached across the country and given someone else courage. My ledger had balanced my own accounts, but the final sum carried benefits beyond my column. I had fought for my inheritance, but in doing so, I had given someone a different kind of asset, the courage to open her own books. I typed my reply, my final entry on the matter, and now I'm not in debt to anyone. I thought for a moment about what the neighborhood looked like now. The new HOA board, elected in an emergency vote after Karen's removal, had already repealed 3 of her most ridiculous rules. Grass could be 2 to 3 inches instead of exactly 2.5. Mailboxes could be any approved shade without daily inspections. The community pavilion was being restored with the return funds, exactly as my grandparents had intended. Neighbors who once whispered, "She's so dedicated," now quietly admitted they'd been afraid to speak up. One evening, I walked past Karen's house on my way to the mailbox. The for sale sign was already up. Her perfect lawn, once the pride of the neighborhood, had a single dandelion poking through, defiant and unfined. I smiled, the first genuine smile in months. The empire of pastel tyranny had crumbled under the weight of its own hypocrisy. I sat on my porch that night, the same porch I'd once feared would earn me a citation for excessive potted plants, and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors no HOA rule could control. The air smelled clean, free of charcoal and forced cheer. Somewhere in the distance, a lawnmower hummed. Not because Karen demanded it, but because someone simply wanted their grass cut. My phone buzzed with a new notification. Another message from a resident 2 streets over who had watched the hearing live stream. "Just wanted to say thank you for standing up. You gave us all permission." I didn't reply with advice. Their audits would have to be their own. Mine was complete. The books were clear. The balance was finally, perfectly, 0. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years let the tension drain from my shoulders. The bruise had faded. The ledger was closed. And in the quiet suburban night, under a sky no one could find for being too blue, I felt the deep, satisfying peace of a job well done. The HOA Karen who thought she owned the neighborhood had learned the hardest lesson of all. Some residents keep receipts. And when the numbers finally come due, even the most powerful pastel tyrant falls. The final chapter wasn't loud. There was no dramatic confrontation on the lawn, no viral video of Karen being escorted away. Justice, like a good audit, is quiet, methodical, and leaves no loose ends. I received the official notice 2 weeks later. Karen Delaney had been formally removed from the HOA board by court order and barred from holding any office or position for 5 years. The district attorney's office had opened an investigation into the assault and potential embezzlement charges. Doug had already started quietly moving assets into his name in a pathetic attempt to shield them. Tyler listed the apartment on a short-term rental site, desperate to recoup something before the 90-day deadline. Mom sent one last text. "I hope you're happy now." I didn't reply. Happiness wasn't the point. Balance was. I used part of the returned funds to install a simple security camera on my porch. Not because I feared retaliation, but because I finally could without worrying about a visible electronics violation. The camera's first recording was of me planting a small flower bed in the exact colors I wanted, no approval form required. The new board president, a quiet retired teacher who had never spoken up before, sent me a polite email thanking me for restoring integrity to our community. She attached the updated bylaws. All future reserve distributions would require full membership vote and independent audit. My grandparents' original intent had finally been honored. One Saturday morning, I drove past the old pavilion. Workers were restoring the roof with the returned money. A small plaque was being installed, dedicated to the Miller family, founders of Whispering Pines, fairness for all. I didn't stop. I didn't need recognition. The numbers balanced. That was enough. Chloe messaged again a few weeks later. She had started documenting her own workplace issues, building her own ledger. "Your story gave me the courage to start my own audit," she wrote. I smiled at the screen. The ripple effect of one quiet woman refusing to stay silent was spreading in ways I could never have calculated. I thought about the thousands of residents across America living under similar petty tyrannies. Fined for flags, fined for holiday lights, fined for existing outside the approved color palette. Most stayed silent because fighting felt impossible. I had shown them it wasn't. The satisfaction wasn't just in winning my $115,000. It was in knowing that somewhere, another Elena was watching her own Karen sweat and realizing the emperor had no pastel clothes. My life returned to its clean, logical rhythm. I went to work, balanced corporate ledgers, came home to a house that finally felt like mine. No more midnight anxiety about tomorrow's violation notice. No more calculating how much of my paycheck would disappear into Karen's discretionary community improvement fund. One evening as the sun set in a blaze of uncontrolled color, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine. No fine for visible alcohol consumption on property. I raised the glass toward the quiet street and whispered to no one in particular, "Here's to balanced books." The wind carried the words away across the perfect lawns that no longer required my silent subsidy. In the distance, a neighbor laughed freely, unconcerned about noise ordinance citations. Somewhere in the neighborhood, another resident was probably opening their own hidden spreadsheet, starting their own quiet audit. And somewhere, in a half-packed moving truck, Karen Delaney was learning the hardest lesson an HOA president could ever learn. You can find the grass, you can find the flags, you can find the mailboxes, but you can never find the truth when someone finally decides to record it. The empire was gone. The numbers were clean. The audit was complete. And in the bright, rule-free sunlight of Whispering Pines, justice didn't just prevail, it laughed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. So please drop a comment down below to say hello and share your thoughts. To help this story reach more people who might need to hear it, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving this video a like, and pressing that hype button to show your support. Your engagement makes all the difference. Thank you again.